Hi again. Dwight Wilson, Armageddon Now, the Premillenarian Response to Russia and Israel since 1917, page 65 in the chapter The Twenties Roar Faintly, Bear, Beast, and Young Lions. The Arab protest movement eventually caused Britain to reinterpret the Balfour Declaration in order to avoid an immediate Arab rebellion. A memorandum by the Colonial Secretary, Winston Churchill, on June 3, 1922, stated that, quote, the terms of the declaration referred to do not contemplate that Palestine as a whole should be converted into a Jewish national home, but that such a home should be founded in Palestine, end of quote. This was a blow to Zionist aspirations and was duly reported by the King's Business, the American evangelical magazine. As such, Churchill was clearly the villain in this situation, and the journal commented that, quote, in spite of enemies within Israel and enemies without, the plan of God will be carried through, and finally all Israel will return to their own land, end of quote. 2 months later, the magazine devoted 2 full pages to a discussion of the issues. It favorably reported that the United States Senate, the previous May, had unanimously passed a resolution favoring the establishment in Palestine of the national home for the Jewish people, and that this had brought great joy and satisfaction and fresh courage to the Zionist movement. This was not to be reflected in American policy, however, as the Department of State throughout the 1920s and 30s usually avoided supporting Zionist interests because of American oil interests and general isolationism. In this article, a policy statement by Churchill was interpreted favorably, even though his accurate appraisal was anti-Zionist. Quote, the only cause of unrest in Palestine arises from the Zionist movement and the British promises in regard to it, end of quote. The article emphasized rather the other aspect of his statement. Another quote here, the task in Palestine is one that England has imposed upon herself and which she is bound to perform unless she is prepared to admit that the word of England no longer counted throughout the Near East, end of quote. Churchill was referring to Britain's Palestine Mandate, which had been approved by the League of Nations July 24, 1922, but this was interpreted by the writer as a commitment to carry out the Balfour Declaration. Moreover, President Warren Harding was quoted as saying, quote, I have always viewed with an interest which I think is quite as much practical as sentimental the proposal for the rehabilitation of Palestine and the restoration of a real Jewish nationality. And I hope the effort now being carried on in this and other countries in this behalf may meet the fullest measure of success. End of quote. Even his enthusiasm did not quite measure up to the level of the magazine's own excited response to the establishment of the mandate. The magazine said, that is, the King's Business said, no one who has at heart the cause of justice to the Jews, or who awaits the fulfillment of prophecy regarding their return to their own land, can learn without emotion that this return is now legally opened and confirmed by the League of Nations. End of quote. The discussion over the right of the British to impose Jewish nationalism upon the Arabs in Palestine eventually produced a widely cited response in support of the Jews. Thomas M. Chalmers, in a pamphlet entitled Israel in Covenant and History, developed a 6-fold defense of the Jewish takeover of the land. He said, quote, Israel's possession of Canaan as an everlasting inheritance is based on an indefeasible title. The Jewish people have 6 titles to Canaan based on the 6 modes of obtaining property in land, end of quote. The first was by homestead law. God had set aside the land for Israel 251 years before Abraham, the father of the Jews, was even born. The second was by gift of grant. Since God had given the land to the Jews, he could not have given it to the Canaanites, who already lived there when Abraham migrated. The third was by covenant. Since Christ had been circumcised, he was heir to Canaan and to all the world, implying he could give it to whom he wished. The fourth was by conquest. Joshua had conquered the land after the Jews' bondage in Egypt. The fifth was by right of tenure. Israel had possessed the land for a total of 1,450 years, and, quote, Israel lost no rights by leaving the homestead, or by eviction, or by the Muslim conquest, end of quote. Notice nothing is said of the Arabs' tenure or right of conquest or right by conquest. The last was by purchase. That is the sixth reason that is listed here by Chalmers is by purchase, not the purchase of land by returning Jews, but by the Redeemer, Christ Jesus. No multiplication of weak scriptural argument, however, could mollify the basic moral injustice of the claim that the Jews had more right to Palestine than did the native Arab population. Arguments were to no avail anyway. After 1917, the claim to possession was decided on the basis of military power, the same way it had always been decided. When England would find possession not worth the cost in military power, in 1948, possession would shift to the Jews themselves, again through the means of military might. Britain's mandate was interpreted by the king's business as similar to the action of Cyrus, the king of Persia, in allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem after their captivity in Babylon, as recorded in the book of Ezra. A writer in the Evangel magazine, however, compared the beneficence of Cyrus to the Zionist movement itself, stating that both demonstrated how the hand of God uses instruments that are not necessarily submissive to him. The deep emotional level of the premillennialist response to the expected restoration is illustrated in one parishioner's recollection of A.B. Simpson, founder of the Christian and Missionary Alliance. He said, "I can recall how my pastor in those days, A.B. Simpson, wept aloud in his pulpit as he announced the sensational news that Jerusalem and Palestine were no longer to be trodden down under the heels of the Turk, but that all 56 signatory powers of League of Nations covenant, besides the United States, had approved the Balfour Declaration." End of quote. There was concern among premillenarians about the Zionist setbacks in the late 1920s. There seemed to be a loss of momentum in the headlong rush to Armageddon. In 1928, the editor of the Evangel regretfully cited figures from the Literary Digest, which showed that in 1926, 13,000 had immigrated, while 7,300 had left Palestine. But in 1927, only 2,700 had immigrated, whereas 5,000 had left. The editor reassured his readers by citing the statement of Thomas Chalmers again in the Sunday School Times that the Zionists were recovering from their temporary setback and that there had been a marked growth over the whole 10-year period. By 1929, the Moody Bible Institute Monthly could bolster its confidence with statements like the following, quote, "Within the first 100 years of Cyrus's edict, not more than 60,000 exiles found their way back to the homeland. But during the last decade, more than 100,000 have done so, while the stream of immigration continues to flow uninterruptedly. Greater things are expected in the future, and especially now that the movement has been taken out of the handful of so-called Zionists and become the task of all the people of Israel. Why cry failure in the face of such facts?" End of quote. While the apparent consensus of premillenarians was that the restoration either had already taken place, was just beginning, or was imminent, there appeared a dissenting view that established other prerequisites. The king's business reflected one school of speculation that said the Jews could not return to Palestine until after the return of the Messiah, the second coming of Christ. Charles C. Cook, founder of the conservative Christians publishing company which bears his name, stated in an article, quote, "The international Jew, that Palestine's possession by the Jewish people is not an immediate prospect. It could not happen until the times of the Gentiles had ceased, and that era could not cease until the return of Christ." This view was based on an interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel 2, in which the stone, that is the symbol of Christ, destroys the image, that is the symbol of Gentile power. And I might remark that that dispute is still on, some not seeing any prophetic significance in the Zionist movement and the restoration of the nation of Israel, some saying it cannot possibly be the fulfillment of prophecy until the Lord's return. But I think the moderating view is probably the right one, namely that there has to be a preparation for that return according to all the prophets, not just Daniel, all the prophets' testimony put together. There has to be some kind of preparation before the Lord's return for the conversion of the nation in the land. I'll put in a link to, this is a meditation by Walter Rauschenbusch on the application of the Jubilee system of land tenure to today. See you soon.